Kia ora and welcome to Wahine, a podcast celebrating wahine in business who are carving their own path with intention, courage and vision. This is a space for honest kōrero about building a business that reflects your identity, your values and the legacy you're creating. I'm your host, Sandra Julian, business coach, mentor and wahine Māori. In each episode, I sit down with wahine entrepreneurs and leaders to explore the real stories behind their success, the lived experiences, the cultural connections, and the bold leadership that shape who they are not only in business, but in life. This isn't hustle culture. This is wahine legacy leadership. Tēnā koe e te tuahine, nau mai haramai ki te hōtaka. He tēnō harikoa hau kia nohotahi tāua I tēnei rā. So it's such a joy to be sitting with you today and doing this episode today with you, Lynda. Like I am really looking forward to sharing your journey and your beautiful kaupapa that is the Little Bread Loaf. So first things first, I'm going to hand to you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Firstly, thank you so much for this opportunity. So te atiawa ko Ngāti Raukawa ki te tonga ko te Atahaunui a Paparangi ko whanau apanui ko Ngāti Kuia Ngā Iwi ko Lynda McGregor taku ingoa. Yeah, so my introduction, my name is Lynda McGregor. I am Wellington based and I am the owner-operator of Little Bread Loaf.
And you and I have known each other for a wee while now. So pre-Little Bread Loaf, you've been in the corporate world for a wee while. And we'll probably touch on that journey and how you've drawn from that journey into your business as our conversation goes. But I'd love for the listeners to know about your business. So the Little Bread Loaf, what is it? How does it operate? What does it look like? Everything about it is not so much the backstory because we'll get there, but tell us about the Little Bread Loaf as it is today.
Okay, thank you. So I suppose the tagline that we have for Little Bread Loaf is that we are an artisan bakery. We're based in Wellington, so we're in Alicetown in Wellington. So we're what we call a scratch bakery. So a scratch bakery is a bakery that makes everything from scratch. So we don't use any type of premixes. We make probably 99% of the ingredients, that we use. We have flour. The things that we probably would get is things like lemon curd or something like that. So we are a tiny little bakery. And when I mean tiny, we are small. So within that bakery, what I do is I am a baker. I also have a baker who works for me. We sell our produce from the bakery. We also work in fresh produce markets throughout Wellington and within the region. We provide catering services. We also have a cafe. So I have a cafe just by the airport in Wellington. And there's something else, but I will get back to that when I remember it. But essentially I'm a bakery. So it's like at the corner of your street, you would go down and buy your fresh loaf of bread every morning. That's really what I am.
Beautiful. So your bakery's in Alicetown. Does that have a shop front to it as well as the cafe near the airport?
Yes, it does. So it's pretty much a production space. And what we do is we retail to the public on 3 days a week, and the bakery itself is used for production 6 days a week. We used to be 7 days production, but I decided that I actually really needed a day off. So it's small. It's not on the main road, so you can't find it. It's like one of those little gems that are kind of tucked away somewhere. You kind of got to know where it is to go there, and that was one of the reasons why I opened up a second outlet. Oh, and now I remember, we also wholesale to restaurants and other cafes.
Love that. You know what? And that's what I love about Wellington. Like when I moved here, I was like, there's this little cafe or this little tucked away shop on this corner and there's nothing else around. And yet that little shop or that little cafe or whatever it is actually booming. There is people coming and going, or the shop is full or the cafe is full. It's like, I think that's what I love about Wellington the most, is that you'll find the best little places tucked away in the most randomest of places.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the my little cafe is, again, it's not on a main road. It's kind of tucked away. It's about, I think Google says we're 2 minutes from the airport.
Right. Okay. And that's close to me. So maybe I need to just go and take a little
Absolutely.
wander down to the cafe in this next week. Let's go to the backstory of how you started the Little Bread Loaf. So you and I met when you were back in corporate. We've done a couple of events together. And then your very last event was the one that I did with you.
Yes.
And then the next day, straight after that event, you were off to be a full-time business owner. So tell me a bit about how long you were doing both and what started this journey into entrepreneurship and business ownership.
Okay. So I think we'll go back. So I've essentially had probably 30 years in the corporate world. So I was a public servant for 20 years and, all sorts of other things. I worked in multi-corporate probably for the last 6 years of what you call a career that were there. But I've always been around food. So it's always been part of who I am. I was cooking for my family from probably about 6 or 7. And my parents owned a business. So we owned a business when I was little and we were working in the shop from say 5 years old. I got a scholarship and I actually went away and I did a chef's apprenticeship. So I did that when I was 18 years old. And then I worked in kitchens. And did a lot of catering, and then I went overseas. So I've always been involved in food. And how I ended up being the owner of Little Bread Loaf. So I'd always been involved in food, done all these bits and pieces and been around. I got very, very sick and I actually couldn't work for about 2 years. So, and I'm a single parent of 2. So what I did, and kind of what my mum used to say to me, is that, you can make anything out of anything, and I could. So I actually started going down to the markets on a Saturday. I'd go just before they close and I'd talk to the market stallholders, and I used to take all of their old fruit and veg that they would have given to the pigs. So the pig man would come around and he would take all of the stuff. So I'd go down there and I'd say, well, why don't you give it to me instead of giving it to the pig man? And they would. And then I'd go home and I'd make jams and chutneys. And the next week I would go down there and I'd give the stallholder a jar of whatever I'd made. And then I would sell the rest. So it might be $5 a jar and I'd sell it to friends, or normally whānau actually. And so I did that. And then the next year, and that would pay for my groceries for the week. And then I took all the plants out of my garden that weren't serving a purpose, and I planted veggies. And so the next year somebody said, oh, Lynda, are you making all the fruit and veg? Are you doing the jams this year? And then I'd end up getting this sort of waiting list. And long story short, it was starting to kind of grow, and I needed some type of commercial space where I could make my food. But I had met the original owner and founder of Little Bread Loaf when I was in a market. So I've been working in market since I was 12 years old, and I was invited to this new market that was being established. So I went down there, ended up being next door to a baker. And when she was ready to sell her business, because she was from Poland, and she was leaving New Zealand, she actually contacted me. So that's kind of how I got there. One of them is I needed a commercial space to make jams and chutneys because I was being approached by more people. And then this opportunity came up, and that's how I thought. Eva didn't want to sell the business to somebody who didn't care, and I really cared, and I needed that space. And then one day, this is kind of a bit of esoteric, I was in my kitchen. I had just done a catering gig for my niece, and I said to her, don't worry about paying me, just buy the ingredients and pay for the staff, which are 2 of your cousins, and that's on me. And I actually met 2 women who were the head buyers for Te Papa, and they tasted my chutney, and they said, who made this chutney? And they said, oh, it was you. And they said, we'd really like to have it in our shop. And I thought, okay. But everything sold. And then I made another batch, and then everything sold. So I never even got to Te Papa. But I was standing in my kitchen, and in the back of my head, I heard my mother say to me, and my mother has passed. She passed in 2017. She says, Lynda, you need to take this more seriously. She said, you need to look at your brand and look at your presentation. And she said, but you need to take this seriously. And so that's pretty much the backstory. So it really came from a place of need, of going down, getting fruit and veg, making something, because I can make anything when it was food-wise, and then having an opportunity that I knew somebody who had a fantastic business, and then I went and I purchased that business. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. So Little Bread Loaf sells chutney, or
Well,
what does Little Bread Loaf sell?
So Little Bread Loaf is a bakery. So we sell kind of pastries, anything that you would find in a bakery. We sell bread. I specialise in rewena bread. So I'm the only commercial bakery in Wellington that makes a traditional rewena bread. So when I say traditional, there is no commercial leaven in there. It is all by the starter. So I make rewena bread, I make sourdough, I make challah, and I make baguettes. We specialise, we're known for our cinnamon buns. I also make large German, soft German pretzels. So anything like you'd find in a European bakery overseas. And like cookies, like at the moment, it's Anzac Day, Anzac cookies. Before that was hot cross buns. And now we're going into, and now it's getting colder, so we make pies. So I make honey pies and all that kind of stuff. So we are essentially a European style bakery. That would probably be the best way to describe.
That you've added an Indigenous kind of twist onto with the rewena bread. And
absolutely, yeah. That was the biggest thing for me was I had taught myself how to make a rewena because my mother wasn't a rewena baker. I was so passionate about this bread. So over the course of 5 years, I took it, all the R&D involved. So I took it from being on YouTube and showing people how to make bread, showing them how to make a starter, to making bread myself, to selling maybe 1 or 2 loaves, and to actually taking it to it's actually at a point where it can be produced commercially. So instead of doing 1 or maybe 2 or 3 loaves, I make 50 at a time. So that would be an average batch. Matariki, will probably be a couple of thousand that we will. But because it is totally traditional in the way that we make it, and we don't use commercial yeast or anything like that, that's our point of difference. And I think that's being a Māori business owner, but not necessarily owning what people think is a Māori business. What you do is you bring in your values and work in an environment of Te Ao Māori environment, but it doesn't matter what the product is that you're actually producing or selling. What matters is the values base and the business structure that you actually have.
That's a lovely segue to our next question, which is, how is your identity, your culture, your personal values, and your lived experience influenced how you have built the business since buying it from, the Polish original owner?
Eva, she had a really lovely, lovely business. And so what I did is I bought everything. I bought the brand, I bought absolutely everything. But what I really wanted is the opportunity to have a structure which was based in my personal and my cultural beliefs. So that was that, you would have the customer, and then you would have the staff or the resourcing, and then you would have your systems and processes. So the way that I interpreted that within my business structure is manaakitanga. So it is about the customer experience. So they sit in there. And then around that, so your resourcing, that's our whakawhanaungatanga. That is the sense of community that we build, and how our staff and our structure. So pretty much if you work for me, you're kind of like a niece or a nephew, or my children work for me. And then around that is what keeps us safe in regards to our systems and processes, and that's tikanga. So that's how I interpret my culture and my beliefs within that business structure. So what is at the top? So most businesses at the top is making money. We want to make money. We need to make profit, which I want to make profit. but that's not what is the most important thing to me. Most important thing to me is around that customer experience, and then around how my staff, are they equipped? Do they feel valued? Are they doing the right type of job? And then around that is those systems and processes. And out of that, the output should be profit, and then the outcome should be about prosperity, whether it be physical or fiscal, or whether it be about your journey, how prosperous, joy and happiness.
That's beautiful, which, there's a lot of conversation and not so much debate around what constitutes a Māori business, because we have businesses that are owned by Māori, but they're not necessarily, you can't see in that front-facing product or service offering that it's an obvious Māori business. But the owner is Māori. So, for example, a Māori owner might own a Subway franchise. So the business itself, not necessarily selling a Māori experience, but actually the owner is Māori. So it's more the service that you get when you walk into that shop, and the way that they operate their business is all probably coming from that Māori worldview. So, I love that you just shared that not necessarily a Māori bread shop, but you're a bakery that is owned by wahine Māori and operated with a Māori worldview.
Oh, absolutely. And, there's not many Māori owned and operated food businesses. And so, again, that's my other point of difference. So people know Little Bread Loaf and they know about what we make, but also what they know is that it is owned by a woman who is Māori. So a lot of corporates, a lot of Pākehā corporates, especially around Matariki, they want to engage with Māori. They want to celebrate Matariki, but they feel disingenuous in some ways, where they feel, as I suppose it's a bit of shame, and it's not theirs. It's, this is the product of colonisation on both sides of the fence. A really easy way to engage with Māori and Matariki is to engage with a Māori food producer. And especially because I make rewena bread and we do our hangi pies, and I make these gorgeous gingerbread tāne, and I do, and they're also interacting with me. And I am Māori. So I always put I am Māori first and foremost. And so that enhances their experience. The level of manaaki that I provide when I'm working in events and functions comes from being Māori. It isn't coming from being a businesswoman. It comes from my intrinsic need to provide manaakitanga to the people that I'm serving. It's a business, but it's great, Matariki yesterday, you're fielding all of these inquiries and you've got, large corporates, and they really want to do the right thing. They just don't really know how to do it. And then somebody will Google hangi pie and there I am, or rewena bread, or there I am. And it's a really easy point of entry into that engagement space.
Beautiful. So tell me, I want to just go back to a little bit of, the what's available in your bakery in terms of, you have staples that you do like 12 months of the year, and then you layer that with seasonal goods in your shop?
Yeah. So it's like I'm actually going to go through the process of actually looking and doing some redesign in our menu and what we provide. So you want to keep things fresh. But the staples of what Little Bread Loaf makes are really is in that kind of sweet treats. So it's the cinnamon buns, but instead of just having one cinnamon bun that has, the cream cheese icing, I do cinnamon buns, but we have about 7 different flavors. I make large, soft German pretzels. When I bought the bakery, they did 3 flavors: cinnamon sugar, cheese, and salted. So now we have 17 different flavors. So you can have an English breakfast, bacon, egg, sausage, hash brown, jalapeno peppers or pizzas and things like that. So those are really kind of the staples. And then what's around there is the bread that we provide. So probably 90% of our rewena bread that we make doesn't actually get to the front counter. So most of it's already pre-ordered and pre-sold. So we have those, and then it's kind of making those cookies. So you have that, and then what happens is normally Show Tuesday hits, and then you've got hot cross buns. So that's kind of when they come in. So you have this big surge. Easter Sunday, nobody wants to see a hot cross bun. You can't sell them for love nor money. And then you have this again. We've got this little kind of peak, which are Anzac cookies. So now that's just about to go off. We're going into matariki, so it'll be a big surge in rewena bread and hangi pies. I make matariki cookies, which are sugar cookies. That I bought these great little Māori designs and things like that. So that's a matariki cookies. And then you'll go in, we'll have more hot food. So it'll be pies and soups. And then when you go into the summer, you have more of a summer range. And yeah, so you'll have the staples. We do lovely like sausage rolls, and we're always looking at things. We do things like pecan pies and cherry pies and apple crumbles. And tomorrow I'm doing a pop-up event for Trade Me. So I go there once a month and I just put everything out. You know, who doesn't love a good scone?
Yeah.
Everybody loves a scone, you know, and it's kind of, so it's a little bit like when you come into the bakery, it's like coming into a warm, a sweet smelling hug. And I make very simple food, but I do it very well. We don't do any croissants. I don't do any French patisserie work or macarons or anything like that. It is like simple food that you would find if you went, you know, if you were going somewhere or you went home, like, or mum was going to make, and no disrespect to anyone's mothers, but the way that we produce it is on a commercial scale. So it just has to, you know, you just have to get that, you know, it has to be good. The other thing we make are babkas. So babka is Polish. And babka is Polish for grandmother. So what it is, it's a twisted loaf, and it's either filled with caramel or filled with chocolate. You roll it out, you smother it in chocolate, then you roll it up, and then you cut it, and then you twist it. And so they have these kind of lovely little pleats, and that represents the pleats of your grandmother's apron. So, yeah. Or on a Friday, we always sell challah because, you know, the traditional Jewish plaited brioche loaf for Shabbos. So we have a lot of people that will come in and they'll buy their challah for Shabbos on a Friday. And it's kind of that I like it, and I've done a lot of research into it before I decided to make it. And we only really have one kosher bakery in Wellington.
Yeah.
So I'm not kosher, but, you know, we make good challah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Just the diversity of who you're serving. Oh, and that story. I love that. Just representative of your grandmother. Like I probably wouldn't buy anything if I thought that brought me closer to her, you know?
Yeah. And what it is people come in and you smell, and it's like the smell. I did an event over a weekend, the catering for it, and I made like a big pot of vegetable soup. And we had toasted grilled cheese sandwiches. And one of the women that was there, and she goes, as soon as she smelt the soup and tasted it, it took her back to her soup that she'd have in her nana. And that's a connection that people are making with that food, which grows community, you know, or somebody comes in and they like a certain thing and they can't find it. Or especially rewena bread, when somebody smells it, you know, they'll smell it, and then it just will take them back into their mother's kitchen or their nana's kitchen. And especially with a lot of women around my age is that feeling of regret because they were too busy when they were young to learn how to make that. But it's those connections, I think, to food, and knowing that it's made with love, I think is probably one of the most important things. When you sprinkle love on something, it just tastes better.
Yeah, absolutely. In all of that, how long have you been working in the bakery? Because I know that you had the bakery a while before you left corporate. So how long have you had it, and then how long have you been there full time?
I'm in my 5th year.
Right.
And I only left last year. So in August this year will be my first year working full time. Yeah. Beautiful. So it was 4 years of working two jobs, and then 1 year of just being fully immersed in the business. which I think in retrospect, people go, oh, you should have left that other job. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, I couldn't really because, I didn't have a lot of money. And that I also really loved what I did. And I was very passionate about the work and what I delivered. But I think the last 12 months has definitely been, for me, the most challenging time I've ever been in business.
What's been one of those biggest challenges that you've faced in this last 12 months?
I think for New Zealand as a whole, I don't think we understood how bad the economy was. I mean, some people probably did. And apparently there were some economic analysts saying that it was getting better and we're out of a recession. Yeah, God bless your cotton socks, sweetheart, because I have not seen that at all. I don't think people realise. So when we got over COVID, but COVID was basically subsidised by the government. So so when your business is closed down, you are still receiving money. I don't think anybody understood just how bad it is. Like, we've had 7,000 jobs that have gone in Wellington through the public sector, the increase of interest rates, mortgage interest rates. So my customer base is pretty much middle class Wellingtonians. Most of them are public servants. They were all pretty comfortable. And if you went to a market, say they would have $25 to spend with you, that $25 then cut in half to $12. Out of that $12, they also now have to get their veggies. So if you get $4 or $6 out of that, that is what you're going to get. Because I'm an add-on person. You don't need a cinnamon bun. What you need are carrots and onions. And I really don't think people realised how bad it was going to be. So my biggest challenge in the last 12 months has been cash flow.
Right.
It's absolutely been cash flow. And, just not having cash.
And that's just because people haven't got that extra cash in their pockets to have that hot cross bun and a cup of coffee, or the pretzel and a cup of coffee. That's just... Absolutely. Everyone's just shut pockets and gone back to absolute essentials they just need to live every day.
You're absolutely right. And it really is. People do not have money. People have lost their jobs. When you've lost your job in the public sector and you got redundancy money for that, fantastic. But you can't go on to any benefit. And a lot of middle-class New Zealanders, if you're middle-aged, there's a lot of shame involved in the fact that you've lost your job. So they're really hunkering down and good on them. But the effect are all the attributes to that economy. So it's not just you've lost your job, you've lost an income stream. So, I had a huge drop in revenue that has been over the last 12 months. The first quarter of this year was absolutely diabolical for me. And it really is. And businesses, you walk past, another business has gone out, another business has gone out. I don't know what the statistics are about within the first 5 years, X amount of businesses won't exist. Yeah, that's right. What's kept me in business is the fact that I just will not give up. I refuse to accept this. And, you're looking back at your organisation and seeing actually where can I make savings, and what can I do and what can I trim off. But would have been super easy last year to have been another business that closed its doors.
What did you do to ensure that you got through this patch? Because we know the economy, it dips and it rises and it dips and it rises, and that's kind of how the economy works. It's never stable. It's never a straight line. So what did you do to get your way through that, given that your business also isn't on the main street of the city, neither the cafe or the bakery on the main street of good foot traffic. It's a destination. So how did you continue to get people into your shop, given it's a destination?
One of the things I'm proud of is that we have an incredibly strong brand. So we have a very strong brand in Wellington. People, they see our branding, they know that we have good products, and they know that there's a reasonable amount of people that have followed me through social media. So they've kind of seen my journey, and that's your core. Those are your core fans. They are the ones that will come in and they will buy that. They will support you through thick or thin. To be honest, I'm going back now, so I'm in quite a reflective state of looking back at the last 12 months, and then I'm going through to reflect and then to build about what does the future look like. I worked incredibly hard. I had to cut staff. I had to cut back, and I just refused to give up. And I mean, like for Christmas, I worked. So my average working day is a minimum of probably about 12 hours. So a 12-hour day in the baking industry is a standard day if you're a baker. You know, if you're the owner, like my staff do not work those hours. So yesterday, I think it was 13, 14 hours I worked. And that's your standard day is 12 hours. So I worked 18 days straight, 12 to 16 hours per day to get through. So that big. And because I was making bugger all. There was just nothing there, but I couldn't afford to get that extra stuff in. So I think that's a little bit not ideal. I can tell you right now, not ideal. And actually some things I just couldn't pay the bills. And I said, can you just wait? Can you wait? It's coming. Can you wait? It's coming. And so some people, yeah, we can wait. And then it came, and then, you know, you went through and you paid all of those. It was just a struggle. And like, this is the first time I've owned a business, you know, and I was kind of like, I really didn't know how hard it was going to be, but I knew if I gave up, then I've got people that will not have work. And also I don't have any investors. So all the money that I have is my own money. What was really disappointing with banks is I couldn't get an overdraft.
Wow.
So, yeah, so you were working on that and no line of credit. So it was kind of like everything was up against it, you know. If I was a movie, it would be the bit in which, you know, where you've got that story arc where everything was going wrong. But there was other things, like I looked at different business, like I looked at different areas of business, like what could I move into? And there was the wholesale side. It was going into the catering, which I didn't offer when I sewed those two streams alone and building those out, and also looking at the business model they currently have and thinking, if you're not bringing in the revenue that I need to keep you, then there's a high likelihood, mate, this is going to get cut. And I love my business and I love all the different things that I do, but I don't love it that much. And you find Wellington food businesses, so we had one food business in particular that's gone into liquidation. Great food business, but they open one outlet which pulled down the whole business. So looking at that. And, yeah, it's harsh.
Yeah. I mean, but I love what you just said, which I want to pick up on, is that when times got tough with the retail side of your business, the selling to the customer, you kind of went, all right, how can I diversify? And so now you've got wholesale and you've got catering. So you've looked at how can I diversify what I do with the products that I have. So you kind of looked at where are the different audiences that I can move into while holding on to the core of what we do.
Oh, absolutely. You've got to pivot. And, you know, I know that's a bit of a kind of corporate blah speech, but it's like you've got to pivot, you know, you're behind the eight ball. But it was kind of, if you didn't do something, like I had to do something.
Yeah.
You know, I got to do something. What is it that we can do? So I don't advertise at all that I do catering. I don't do any advertising at the moment, but we will do. So that's part of the strategy. So we'll build that into our, you know, website so we have a bigger presence. Why didn't I do catering when I first established Little Bread Loaf as my business? Because I don't think that I had the knowledge and capability to be able to do that and this and this and this. So let's get your baking right first, mate. Make a really good bun. Because if you're making a really below par bun, but you're also launching a catering business, well, you're going to have neither. So slowly over the years, started off with a bakery, used to sell just out of the bakery. Then I tapped on a market. I've worked in markets for years. So then I worked in a couple more markets. And then, you know, I tapped on the cafe, and then we tapped on the wholesale side, and then we clipped on the catering business. And last year for Matariki, I didn't know this at the time, but I did this catering event for the BNZ. And what I didn't realise at the time, until about a week out, that it was the formal opening of their building. So,
Oh, wow.
and it was so it was 250 people, and we did this beautiful, like the event that we did was absolutely fantastic. So those kind of things. So yeah, they told me as an add-on. Oh, and by the way, blah blah. And then I've got other clients, and they're big, what they call blue chip. They're fantastic. And then they kind of add on there. So that's a growth area that I see. But you cannot stand still. You can't make what you made 5 years ago if the public don't want to eat it. It's a little bit like cupcakes. Everybody wanted a cupcake. Can you find a cupcake now? Absolutely not. You've got to keep on moving. And then it was donuts, like at the thing of donuts, and people going, Lynda, make cupcakes. I said, I don't want to make cupcakes. They go, Lynda, are you going to make donuts? I said, don't want to make donuts. Why? And I said, because I don't want to fry anything. I don't want to be a facsimile of something else. I want to be the genuine article of what I want. And what I want to do is not donuts.
Yeah. I think there's lessons to learn in what you just talked to as well, in terms of learn how to bake a bun. So start with one area and do that area really well. This is a conversation that I was having with one of my mentees yesterday. She's come out of the gate and she wants to do this whole range of products. And I'm like, okay, let's start with honing it down to one. And let's get known for that one thing and do that really well, and then add on the next product and then the next product. So the lesson that I just took away from what you said is bake the bun, do the bun, be known for the bun, do it really well, and then expand, and then do that really well, and then expand.
Yeah. That would be my advice. I am somebody who likes to do lots of things. So the learning for me is actually stop it, Lynda. Stop it. And then go back and thinking, I'm about to open up a new market. I really like the space, but I have to think of their logistics. When we started making rewena, so as Māori, rewena is big loaf of bread that's made in a Dutch oven, which Māori love. And when I do orders for them, that's what Māori want. But what I've developed is a hamburger bun bap. That is what sells. So, and now it sells in cafes, restaurants. And I know this sounds terrible. It's the normalization of this bread. Yeah. Everybody knows what a baguette is. Everybody knows what a croissant is. And when you say rewena, they go, what? What's that? And they go, it's that potato bread. And I said, no, not necessarily. It's a sourdough. But you've got it in a way that you can broaden your market for that. So, and I'm developing one for a customer of mine. They're going to be Wellington on a plate this year, big Wellington, and they want my bun. They want my bread. So I'm developing something that's rewena, but different. It's really cool. It's going to be quite different. But you can't stand still, but also don't try to do everything at once, because in your head you just don't have that headspace. Well, that's my lived experience.
How has your leadership evolved as your business has grown and had these challenges along the way, and you've had to think a little bit differently? How has your leadership evolved during that time?
I have a very, and you'll know this, Sandra, because we've worked together. I think I have a very distinct working style that I have. So I'm a reasonably easygoing person. So I don't like conflict. I don't want that. I want to bring communities together to work as a team. So I do not like working by myself, even though 80% of my time I'm working by myself. But that's the burden I bear as being the sole business owner of this, this gargantuan entity. So I have a very distinct style. Leadership is about people feeling safe. People have to feel safe. So when people feel safe, a little bit like your kids, when they feel safe, they will know that they can communicate more, and so they'll push the boundaries, or you could have an argument, or they can call you out and you can call them out. And I think at the core for me, it's about the people who work for me feel safe, so feeling, how do you feel safe? You feel safe because you're trusting the person that's leading you. And how do people trust you? They trust you because you're a clear communicator, or you are transparent and you're clear. I'm pretty straight to the point, and they know what the standard is. If they didn't know what the standard is and they're not attaining the standard that you want, you can't go back and say, hey, look, you're doing it wrong. Actually, that's on you, mate, because you didn't tell them what was right. So if you spoke to my staff, probably the clear thing is that I am fair, so I'm very fair about what we do. I'm very clear about what I want, and they trust me because I've got their bag. If we have to have a conversation, we'll have a conversation. If staff that work for me aren't working out, then we help them the transition. I'm too small to carry resources that aren't feeding back into the business. And I think it was kind of confirmation going into working for myself and having a team of what I always thought good leadership is actually good leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I've worked for people for many years, and some places I used to think, I don't understand what that decision was, or I don't understand why are you doing that? And the other thing is that you cannot be a coward. If something doesn't work, you say so. Don't get worried about hurting somebody's feelings, because if the intention is there, it is about keeping the business together. People will understand. They may not like it. Doesn't matter whether you like the decision that I made. At the end of the day, I make the final decision. And I think, again, with my team, they understand that. The final decision comes from me because I carry the risk.
That's right.
You want to carry the risk, darling? Knock yourself out. You can make that decision. But until you do, and also I carry the burden. So I carry the success of my business or the failure of my business. That is me. But it's bringing that team together. So that's probably the main thing that I absolutely love about owning business. I love leading people.
Yeah. And you do a fabulous job of it. You communicate well. And what you just said is so resonant of how I determined my own leadership over time. Because sometimes I had the mirror put right up in my face and it bounced right back, and I was like, oof, I don't like what I see, and had to change. But what I worked out is, care deeply, but communicate well, Absolutely. So if you're communicating what your expectation is and when it's falling short, but you care deeply for the person themselves, then it makes it not just fair, but you're looking after the person, whatever the message is, so whether the message is good, bad, or indifferent, you've got the person at heart because you care deeply about them. But, at this time, it's not what my business needs. So, unfortunately, we can't carry the resource. So it's, what you just said I really liked is leadership is about making people feel safe.
Oh, absolutely. If you feel safe, it's like in a hotel. Hotel staff should never run. If you ever see somebody running, something's wrong. It's kind of you have to feel that you're okay. It's managing a project. You're not the one that yells and screams, because what you do is you unsettle everybody else. You're the one that may sit there and you still have those conversations, but people have to feel safe. And I care greatly for my team. And they care for me. So they care for me, then they will attribute to the success of my business, and I will look after them. Yeah, and there is a little story. Probably don't have time to say it, but there was a point in which one of my staff members was profiled in large wholesalers and wasn't allowed to get the products, wasn't allowed to, had to show his ID, had to all this stuff. And he came back to the bakery and he says, oh, this has happened. I said, you've just been profiled. And the thing is that he didn't realize that he had. So I went down and saw them and I said, oh, and can you please tell me about your policies? And they said, oh, it's this, this, and this. And I said, great policies, photo identification, and all these things, because I have an account there. And I said, but you've only ever implemented that on one of my staff members, and there's 5 of my staff members come here. And, and I put it straight and then went back to work and said, you either do that to everybody or you do that to nobody, but you do not profile my team. and things like that. And I didn't have to do that. And then, my staff member goes, "Oh, I didn't realise that was happening." I said, "It happens all the time, darling." But it's those kind of things. You don't have to make a big hoopla, we work very hard, but you have to care. And if you don't care, then don't be in business.
Yeah, right? Yeah, for sure. I really resonate with that, for sure. So as the sole owner of your business who wears the risk, carries the burden, but actually reaps the rewards as well, who do you have supporting you? Like, how do you, as Lynda, the business owner, get your support to feed into you so you can then go out and feed into your clients, your staff? What kind of support system do you have around you?
Are we talking about business support? Or are we talking about personal support? Because it's
however you might get support to be the business owner that you are.
Okay. I think there's two things that I want to say. One of the things is one of the lessons that what I didn't do, which I should have done, is I am an incredibly private person. So I consider myself openly private. So, I have to have all these social media channels and things like that. I don't share a lot. And in the last 12 months when things were pretty bad, I should have shared more or spoken to people a bit more about what the struggles were, instead of, looking at the bank and seeing the lack of money and thinking, oh, holy crap, what am I going to do? And I didn't do that. I didn't share how hard things were. And I think that was not a good thing for me to do. And actually, if I'd say that was a stupid thing. So I have a very small network of businesswomen that are my friends, really. We just all happen to own our own businesses. So we do have these kind of reflection periods when we sit down and we talk about, and we're all in very different industries, but we all have very similar kind of issues, I think. So that is a nice thing to do. There's a bit of investment that I'm going to make in my own professional development in regards to business professional development. I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like at the moment, but I think I know enough to know what I don't know, and what I don't know is a lot. And I think also, I have a strong whānau network. So I live next door to my brother, Kone, and we've had some really good conversations about different things about business, because he just says his business is exactly the same as my business. It's just bigger. So being the chair of the two, he goes, our issues that we have, cash flow, the issues that we have, resourcing, he goes, they're exactly the same as yours, Lynda. They're just more amplified because of the size. So every now and again, if I've got a particular issue, I might have a bit of a chat. I do belong to the Chamber of Commerce. I haven't been there in ages, and that. So I think those are probably the support systems that I have. And I think I've undershot that. And I've got to put a bit of a shout out, because Victoria has been my brand marketing specialist in the business. So again, I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough money to put it in marketing. So I'm not going to lie to her and say, hey, look, Victoria, I've got all this money. Can you do all this work for me? Because I didn't have it. But coming back and reflecting about where the business is going, I caught up with Victoria last night and said, oh, by the way, we've got work coming up. And so she learned to say, okay, let's have a chat and we talk about budget. And then we can talk about. So I always found her incredibly helpful to me in regards of bouncing ideas. Nice. And we kind of got on the same vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. What about rituals, routines, practices that keep you grounded in your values, which you then put into your business and keeps you connected with that bigger vision that you have for your business? So any rituals, routines, practices that keep you grounded in who you are with what you do?
Again, that's a really interesting question. For me, there's two parts of my life, and then it kind of all comes in together. And the bit that always brings it all together is being Māori. So the rituals that I have as Māori, the understanding of what I do as Māori. And I kind of think that encapsulates everything there. Do I do yoga every morning or Pilates while the sun is coming up? No, I don't. That's like a ritual of what some people do that grounds them. I've got 2 growing children now, and I get probably a little bit too involved, and like my son is going to be a filmmaker and things like that. They ground you, being a mum and things like that. And actually my family, it kind of grounds you. I suppose what really grounds me, and when I look at my values and then connecting it back to my business, I am very community focused. So I have a big strip of my time is about giving back to the community. So I actively support 2 charities in Wellington. I sit on the board of a charity, and I find that very humbling and very grounding. So one of them is a little initiative called Friday Cafe, which is run by our local church. They have a cafe every Friday for people who are intellectually and physically handicapped. So there's a barrier to them. They couldn't physically probably come into my cafe. They're marginalised, so they wouldn't want to come into those spaces. So I give kai to them on a Friday morning. So whatever's left over on a Thursday goes down to them. So that's something that really grounds me. And I also support DCM, which is Downtown City Ministry. And they're the ones that really deal with the homeless. And again, I help them when they run kind of food drive campaigns. If I've got any leftovers and I'm driving past, I'll pop it in, and they have like a little space for everybody's in there. And it's humbling to the fact that I may think I'm having a really bad day, and I may think when I look at my bank account that, it's like, oh, it isn't looking too good. But I'm probably more have an altruistic streak than most. And what it does is it brings me back to my core values, which is about people. It is about whakawhanangatanga. It's about manaakitanga. It is about the experience that they're having. And so if I can do that in some way, and I do that through giving of my time, and that's what my mother did. So for her entire life, she typed, and that's what she taught us to do. So I think that is probably what just, shut up, Lynda, sit down, it's going to be okay, because you have that compassion. You do, because you can worry about everything, and you can worry about your business because the one down the road is getting more people in there, and it's a real thing. But sometimes I've got to take myself out of that space, and I'm not going to run a marathon. I don't go out a hell of a lot, but what I do like to do is being of service. So, and that's how I bring my business into it as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it does. And I think how we ground ourselves is different for everybody. I don't think there's any, you should meditate, you should do yoga, you should XYZ. I think we burden ourselves too much with the shoulds in this life. But when we can find the moments that bring us back to, okay, this is what I'm here to do, this is my contribution to the world, and this is what brings me joy, that's the piece that, fills your heart. That looks different for everybody. So I appreciate the way that looks for you, and how you can hear it when you talk around how gratifying and humbling when you do that work it is for you as a human.
Yeah, it is. And it will be a bit emotional. It is, because at the center of it, it makes me happy. Yeah. And it fills my soul, and it may not make everybody happy. And like, I wouldn't give somebody something to eat if I wouldn't eat it myself. So sometimes I think, I'm not going to give that. I'm not giving that away. Not that I'm not going to give it away. It's not good enough. It's about dignity. So everybody should be treated with dignity. Mm-hmm. And I do that through the provision of food. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. That is so uniquely you. And if anyone knows you, they will say that absolutely that is Lynda. I think if we just described someone without saying your name, they go, oh, that's Lynda, Lynda, I've absolutely enjoyed our conversation, and bringing your voice and your journey and your story to the podcast. I think it's going to resonate for so many other small business owners listening, and have that feeling of, okay, I'm not on this journey alone, because I can now see it reflected in other small business owners. So I appreciate your honesty, your openness, although I didn't expect anything less from you, really. But I do have one question. And this is a bit of new addition to the podcast. So for every episode, there will be a question left by a previous guest that I'm going to get the next guest to answer. So the listeners know you haven't had this question ahead of time. And this is how I kind of want to run this moving forward, because I want the real raw responses instead of a pre-thought response to the questions, which brings such good content because it will always come from the heart. So the question that I have for you that was left for you to answer was, what's one belief, value, or practice that's guided you through your business journey, and how has it shaped the way that you show up in your work today?
Can you please repeat the question? That's part of it. I'm just going to take some notes.
Yeah. So what's one belief or value or practice? So just what's one thing that's grounded you through your business journey, and how has it shaped the way that you turn up in your business today?
Okay. So practice, belief, or just one of them, right?
One thing. Yeah.
Okay.
One thing.
Okay. I'm going to take belief, right? I'm taking belief for 10 points. Okay. So I truly believe in myself and my intuition. And my intuition is never wrong. So that feeling in your puku is the feeling that you go with, and trust yourself. Take away all the ghosts that are telling you that you're not good enough, or, all these things that we have, especially as being women and all that other things. I truly believe in myself. What makes me show up every single day is that I believe in myself, and I believe that everything is going to be okay. Now, the journey that we take is going to have all these ups and downs, and sometimes you have lots of downs and little ups, and then downs and little ups. But I truly believe in what I am doing and the team around me. It is going to be okay. So that is my belief, and I practice that through believing my intuition. Now, you also have to back it up with data for some business, business decisions, things like that. But as my mother always said, the first thought that comes into your head is a heavenly thought, and that has come down from the heavens. Now, what you do with that is what you do with that. That's a belief.
Beautiful. I love that so much. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your openness, your sharing. E te tuahine, pai rawa atu taku ngākau, I rongo au tō kōrero I tēnei rā. So my heart is truly filled with all that you have shared today, and I am so blessed that you chose to say yes to having this conversation with me and sharing your story. So thank you ever so much. I am so grateful.
You're most welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to Wahine. If today's kōrero resonated with you, inspired you, or made you stop and think, I'd love for you to follow the show and share it with another wahine in business. You'll find all of the links and details from this episode in the show notes. And if you're enjoying the podcast, I would really love it if you could leave a quick rating or review wherever you're listening to the podcast, because that goes a long way to helping others find this podcast and the stories we're sharing in this space. So until next time, keep building your business your way, grounded in who you are and the legacy you're here to create. The podcast music is Te Kawa Orongo by Naneko Erawata. The episode is edited by LJS Creative Services, and the show notes and blog post are written by Bellbird Writing.